going to have a conversation with us, and we'll see how it goes. All right, we are live.
Okay.
All right. Hey, everybody, Jeff here with the Curse of Oak Island and Beyond live stream. And thank you all for waiting. Those of you guys have been out there waiting for us to get started here tonight. We've had a few technical difficulties, and as the divers here just said, what was that again? You said just a minute ago?
Divers like water.
But I can't think unless I'm underwater.
Computers don't like us.
Yeah, computers don't like them because they're divers. So, all right. So anyway, we're going to be talking about Tuesday night's episode of Beyond Oak Island, which was Captain Bellamy's Bounty. And I tell you what, the bounty is here tonight because Tony Sampson said he could come on tonight and help us through this episode. And then he called me about, I don't know, an hour and a half ago and said, is it okay if I bring Barry along? And I'm like, yeah, of course. so here we are, Jeff Babineau co-hosting. Jeff, how you guys all doing tonight?
Hey, great.
This is awesome. But I apologize for the technical difficulties, but we do have Barry on the phone. He was having some computer issue there. So anyway, thank you all for showing up here tonight. I really appreciate it. We got a good crowd already brewing. I know some people were waiting to get going, but we are going now. So hey, Jess, how you doing? We got some folks jumping in. So we're going to be talking about season 3, episode number 8, Captain Bellamy's Bounty. And I'm really going to kind of, I'll lead this along, but really this is one of the greatest episodes because of the fact that it is another shipwreck that we're going to be talking about. Now, we talked about the Atocha not that long ago with Melvin Apt and the Mel Fisher Museum down there, and that was really cool, and how they have exclusive rights to the Atocha. Well, now Barry Clifford and his son Brandon are the ones that are now working the Whydah shipwreck. And the Whydah is off the coast of Cape Cod. It went down there after it was overtaken by Captain Black. It was Captain Black Sam Bellamy. And he took over the ship. And he had a funny way of going about that. But one of the things that I wanted to do about his talking about this tonight is, and I wanted to ask Tony and also Barry a little bit about. Well, Barry, I tell you what, are you still on the phone with us?
Yep,
Okay.
I am.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and your son and how this all got started with finding the Whydah.
Well, I was on Martha's Vineyard at the time, and I had a diving business out there.
Mm-hmm.
And Brandon was 4 years old, and John Kennedy Jr. was my only employee at the time.
Wow.
So, and John was just when he came to the island, he worked with me, and we would do various salvage jobs. And I was also a school teacher, but I did salvage work on the side.
Mm-hmm.
But we were very interested in shipwrecks and explored a lot of shipwrecks around Martha's Vineyard and the islands around the Elizabeth Islands, and I just became fascinated with the whole thing. And then in 1978, we really decided to go look for the Whydah. And that's what we did. So in the fall of in the fall of 82, we went over to the Cape, and that was the first time we actually dove on the shipwreck. We had spent a couple of years doing research and looking for documents and all of that.
Right. Now, when you found it, I mean, now we're going back in time a little bit here, of course, and technology wise, but when you first went out there, I mean, how did you go about, because I know when on the episode, you guys went out and you did what Tony has referred to as mowing the lawn, where you're taking us like a side scan sonar and you're making your way back and forth, scanning the bottom. How did you go about locating what was underwater back then? The same kind of system, or?
No, we used a magnetometer.
Okay.
And when we first went out to look for the shipwreck, we expected to dive down, and see boxes of treasure and mermaids. And but
Yeah.
it was just white sand. nothing but sand.
Wow.
So everything was completely buried. We didn't have any idea how deeply it was buried. Right now, we're digging down as deep as 30 feet deep to get to this layer of Pleistocene glacial till. And
Wow.
everything is like putting a penny on a snowbank in January. And, where is it going to be in July? It'll be on the sidewalk. That's the same thing when artifacts go on top of the sand. Eventually, they'll work their way down through the sand, and they land on this area of Pleistocene glacial till, including stones and clay. And everything just sits right there, perfectly preserved, because there's no oxygen that can get to it.
Right.
So it's preserved in this perfect anaerobic atmosphere. And when Tony and Brandon came across this section of the ship in the show, as Tony can tell you, it's perfectly preserved. And that's because it had just been uncovered with a big storm that we had.
Wow.
And the first time in God knows how long that, it had actually been uncovered.
Wow. Yeah, Tony, you had mentioned that anaerobic condition, and somebody had mentioned that to us before. You were talking about the difference between coins and artifacts that are found like down by the Atocha that you dove on, and up here. Explain that difference again, if you would.
Well, what happens is
Tony, hold up a second. We're getting that garble again. Can you reset? Check your setting on the mic again, real quick. Yeah, it's still there. I can hear it.
How's that, guys?
There you go. Perfect. Thank you.
God, awesome. So what it is like Barry was mentioning, in an anaerobic environment. So it's an environment that doesn't have oxygen. So it's like, say, in silt or mud, or if an artifact sandwiched between two bits of timber, then what happens is the air doesn't get to it, or another corrosive factor, another piece of metal. In warm water, what that does is it speeds up the process. So timbers down, say, on a wreck in the warm waters of Florida, if they're exposed, they will deteriorate quickly.
Wow.
In the freezing cold North Atlantic waters, so up where the wreck of the Whydah is, off the coast of England, Scotland, even here in Atlantic Canada, when you find an artifact, as Barry said, if it's uncovered after a storm, then quite often it'll come out looking like the day it went down.
Wow.
So, there's artifacts that I sent you a picture of dating from the mid 1700s through to the mid 1800s. And you'll notice there's two copper coins, a copper nail from the mid 1700s and a gold coin from the early 1800s. And they look,
I'm going to bring that up.
coin especially looks like the day that they were made. And that's what things can look like when they come out of cold water, where if you put them in hot water, obviously they will look completely different.
Wow. That's amazing.
Jeff, I was listening to a presentation that Dr. Ballard, Robert Ballard, was giving on the Titanic the other day, and he was discussing how the Titanic, when the bow went down into the ocean, 12,500 feet from sea level, it dug about 30 feet into the soil. And the same kind of conditions that Tony just mentioned were there. And they said that when they get, all they have to do is go slightly below the silt, and they can see brand new paint that's sitting on the Titanic that's preventing it from rusting. And years ago, he tried to do a painting, sort of a restoration project down below underneath the sea to paint the Titanic to try to keep it from the rusticles from corroding the ship any further. But he said it's basically all brand new underneath the silt bed.
That's amazing. That really is. That's truly amazing. And is that, Tony, is that somewhat similar? I know we don't want to talk about Oak Island too much here, but is that kind of similar what's happening in the swamp in preserving things?
Yeah, anything like a swamp, again, as long as two metals are not touching each other. So then you have, for want of a better word, the more noble metal will sacrifice itself. So it's the same reason we put a zinc anode on an outboard motor, is the zinc is the sacrificial anode. So gold and silver will become sacrificial anodes as well.
Wow. Okay. That's very interesting. I had no idea, but I knew that, like, they were bringing up things from the swamp, and yet they were pristine. I mean, the pieces of wood that is dating back to the 1200s or whatever is coming up pristine. It's just amazing.
As
And I
long as
never
it's
knew
that
that about.
anaerobic environment. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really neat. You know what? I wanted to ask a little bit too, Barry, if I could. One of the things that I heard you say on the show, and I have to admire you so much for this, because one of the things that, first of all, you had mentioned on the show that you have not sold one iota piece, not one piece of what you have recovered so far. And the other thing you said was when they first found that piece of wood and they were like, "Oh, do you think it's from the Whydah?" And you had said this, you said, "It's history. It doesn't matter what it is." And I really admire you for that. And is that the philosophy that you've taken on this whole project?
Yeah, we definitely years ago, when we understood what we had discovered
Mhm.
and what we were looking for, basically, you're talking about a slave ship that was captured by pirates.
Right.
And on this slave ship, which had a license to buy and sell people, these escaped slaves, along with European pirates, most of whom were, brutalized merchant sailors and what have you, they were experimenting in democracy with Native Americans, Africans, and Europeans on board a former slave ship. And these terrible, terrible pirates, especially the Africans, were stealing money that paid for themselves and their families. It's okay that people sell you, but you can't steal the money that paid for you. And when people have to think about that twice, it's like, wait a minute, something's wrong here. No, nothing's wrong. It's just that's the way history was written. They excluded all of this stuff in all of the history books I read when I was a kid.
Yep.
I never read about blacks being free pirates on board pirate ships.
Yeah.
A third of all of the pirates in the golden age of piracy were of African origin. I never knew that
I
in
didn't
school.
either. No.
And it was all covered up by ethnocentric historians, especially in the time of slavery, because the last thing plantation owners would want was for slaves to realize that if they escaped, they could be free on board pirate ships.
Wow. Yep.
And like Barry said there, guys, not only were they
Tony, hold up a second. Tony, we're getting that funny garble again. I don't know why it's doing that.
You back again or?
Yeah, it's still doing it. I'm sorry.
Well, he's been around the pirate ship. He's starting to talk like a pirate. Yeah, Tony, you're talking like a pirate.
How's that, guys? You got me now?
No, it's still doing it.
That
You
was
gotta get
video.
that pirate off the shoulder, Tony.
How about now, guys?
There you go. Perfect. There you go. You got it.
Okay. So when Barry was talking about not only were they experimenting in democracy, but you've got to realize that these pirates in 1717 actually had health insurance, life insurance, and a back to work scheme.
Wow.
So every body part, just like the modern day insurance companies had a value, the eyes, the legs, the arms. If you lost a limb, you got so many pieces of treasure along with your share of the booty. That was your compensation.
Wow.
So, it's what Barry said before. When you're looking at a ship like this, it's not just the gold and shiny stuff and the silver that's the treasure. The whole thing is the treasure. Barry.
Oh, sorry.
Barry's not a treasure hunter. He's a treasure finder. This whole thing is a treasure.
Yep.
Yeah, keep in mind also, guys, that on the Whydah rubbed 54 ships, and many of the ships that they captured were carrying things that were generations and generations old.
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking about this cross section of cultural material that's unprecedented. Unlike a Spanish galleon that was carrying all freshly minted coins,
Right.
we've brought up thousands and thousands of coins from the Whydah, going all the way back to Ferdinand and Isabella, right up to 1717.
Wow.
And we have many, many, many one-of-a-kind coins, like coins going back to the late 1400s.
Mm-hmm.
it's just incredible. And we have all kinds of Masonic symbols and Templar symbols and Jacobite symbols,
Wow.
because there were many Jacobites on board the Whydah who were escaping the persecutions, in Great Britain. So this is this incredible experience on this pirate ship where all of these escaped slaves, Jacobites, Native Americans who were escaping from slavery as well, were on board this pirate ship. And it was a free ship, and it was a former slave ship. And the reason what occurred to me, as a teacher, and it's always been about kids for me, is that how could, this has to be preserved. I'm not going to sell one thing. So I promised myself I would never sell anything. If I promised Tony, it would have been different. But I'm just kidding. But I promised myself I would never sell a thing, and I haven't.
Man,
We haven't sold one thing.
that's amazing.
And I have to rip paper napkins in half because we have money such an issue. And we're sitting on top of the world's only pirate treasure.
Yeah, and that's something too, because I mean, it's you have, and I know they mentioned that to you on the show about the millions of dollars, and you're like, I don't know how much it's worth. I have no idea, because you didn't care about that side of it. But that has to be something, because you're funding this search effort. I would imagine, you have to, a lot of this is coming out of your own pocket. So that's got to be.
Myself and my former partner who passed away a few years ago from Colorado, just invested millions of dollars in this project, and both of us just were committed to preserve it. And again, these coins paid for people, and we have people who are screaming, "This treasure is worth a fortune. You have to sell it." Well, wait a minute. You're going to sell coins? You're going to have people wearing coins that paid for people?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah, that's
These
true.
have to be preserved.
Yeah.
And that's what we've done. And it's not been easy, because we have some really greedy people that we have to deal with who are just demanding things, to be sold. And we're not going to do it.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, you said
and
right
we're
after
opening up
Go ahead. Sorry.
we have 2 museums open now. We had our museum with National Geographic traveled all around the country for years and years, going to the biggest museums around the country. And we're going to be opening up a new museum in Las Vegas. We just opened another museum in Salem. And of course, we have our museum here on the Cape. But, millions and millions of people have seen our exhibit. And when kids come out of the exhibit, and we did a program today at the museum where we do live podcasts to a hospital in Boston, where kids who have some disabilities are able to talk with our archaeologists and all of that. And that to me is the real treasure.
Yeah.
And I come into the museum and I'll see kids, and I'll hide coins around the museum, like these plastic gold coins,
Right.
and giving them little treasure maps to go look for things. It's like, oh my God, that's the treasure to me. I have such a blast teasing kids.
Yeah. And I got it. And again, that's another thing that, Mary just said it right there too. I admire you for your commitment to history. And I do also. That's amazing that you do that. And like you said, you're teaching, you've taught me a couple things already tonight, just from listening to you. And that is your thing. Your legacy is to teach that to people, and especially to kids, about the same ethic about what you're finding and what to do with it, and share it with people in such a way. That's just, it's amazing.
And we've brought up over 200,000 artifacts, way over 200,000 artifacts. And I'm talking about 200,000 artifact cards with the numbers where the artifact was found, pictures and drawing of each artifact. Okay. We have hundreds of thousands of artifacts that are still encapsulated within these concretions that we discovered. One of the concretions weighs 13,000 pounds.
Wow.
Another concretion that we have has a complete human skeleton.
Yeah.
You can see the X-ray. You can see his pelvis, and right over the top of his pelvis, you can see what looks like a pocket filled with coins.
Yeah.
And we haven't taken that apart yet.
Yeah, we saw that on the show.
It takes months and months and months to preserve these things. I mean, we have we have another lifetime of work just preserving what we've brought up. We have tons and tons and tons of concretions in our laboratory that we haven't taken apart yet.
Wow.
And we just found a 100-foot section of the wreck. It's in perfect condition. I can't talk too much about it,
Right.
but
right.
we are just like, oh my God, what did we just find?
Oh my goodness. That's crazy. I just brought up a picture, and I did grab some pictures from the television program, and I brought one up and showing that concretion of around the skeleton that you spoke of, and I'm showing that picture right now. And I was amazed when that came on the show. I was like, "There's a body inside that thing."
Can you see the pelvis?
No, I don't have a picture of the actual
okay.
X-ray scan. No, I don't. I just have the
Okay.
what looks like a big blob of concretion there. That's all I've got.
You can
Well,
actually see the bones sticking out.
That weighs about 1,500 pounds.
Wow. What was that, Tony?
You can actually see the bones sticking out of the concretion there if you look close.
Wow. That's amazing. That's
And
amazing.
that's just one of hundreds that we haven't taken apart yet.
Oh my gosh.
And that was brought up back in the 80s. Okay, so it's just so time consuming and expensive to do this, but
Oh my
we're going to
gosh.
continue to do it, and we're going to hopefully preserve the whole collection, for posterity, to be shared with people and for kids, because kids love the whole pirate thing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And one of the pirates on board the Whydah was a 10-year-old boy named John King. And we found his leg bone concreted to a cannon.
Oh.
And it's obviously the cannon had killed him. And then he became encapsulated, or his leg did. And we found his shoe. And inside the shoe was a silk stocking with a human fibula. And we had the fibula tested. And it turned out to be a boy about 10 or 11 years old.
Oh my gosh.
And then we found primary source documents that describe the captain of the ship complaining about this very rebellious boy whose name was John King, who threatened his mother and joined the pirates when he was 10 years old. So that's John King's leg bone that we found.
Wow.
So
And
Barry, did they have frequent elections on who they would frequently determine who was captain? Like, it wasn't just a given that captains were going to be the captains forever. Would that be true?
I didn't hear you that well on that. Sorry.
I've been led to believe with being a captain of a pirate vessel, you weren't necessarily given to be the captain all the time. You could be voted off your out of the position due to the democracy on board the ships. Is that true?
You could be voted off anytime except if you were in battle. But but you could be voted off. And Bellamy was elected as captain of the ship. And Bellamy and Blackbeard and a fellow by the name of LeBooze were shipmates together.
Oh wow.
And LeBooze, Blackbeard were both killed, and Bellamy was killed. But we discovered LeBooze's tunnel complex on an island off of Madagascar called Île Fabon, Pirate Island.
Wow.
And we were exploring that. And LeBooze was one of the most successful pirates in the world. And he was from a wealthy family, and he was an architect, but he turned pirate. He was French.
Right. Wow. And that's a little bit of a misnomer too, is that a lot of times people think, well, pirates were uneducated and really just, really the scum of the earth type people that were out doing what they were doing. But that's actually, I'm coming to find out that that's completely wrong. That many of the pirates had extremely educated backgrounds and came from all walks of life. So they weren't the scourge of the society or whatever. There was many of them that were very well educated. Is that what you're finding true as well for both of you, Tony?
Well, I am. And then again, don't forget, it was legal to buy and sell people then.
Yeah.
And if you escaped from slavery, that was a crime, and you would be hanged for that. So, in terms of a third of the pirates were black. So it's a story that hasn't been told yet, and this, to me, is one of the most important parts of history. is because democracy is in our blood. People don't want to be told what to do. They want to have they want to have a vote. They want to be free. And that's what these people were doing. They were experimenting with basic instincts,
Yep.
Freedom.
Yep.
And that has to be explored carefully.
Yeah.
And that's what was my mission, was to tell the story again and again and again.
And you're doing it well. I appreciate that. I think everybody does. Go ahead, Tony.
How you hearing me, guys?
Yeah, it's garbled again. Sorry. I know. I don't know why it's doing that for you, but hang on, folks, just a minute. He'll get it cleared up.
How about that, guys?
There you go. Perfect.
Yeah. So, like Barry said, they were with the experimentation and democracy. The other thing is, you've got to remember the difference between a pirate and a privateer was a piece of paper. And so all a privateer was a pirate with a piece of paper. So back to your point about well-educated pirates, you're talking Sir Francis Drake, Sir Walter Raleigh, Peter Easton, Captain Kidd.
Yep.
They were all members of the aristocracy, but for want of a better word, they were private pirates. And Captain Kidd, I believe he got a raw deal. He didn't even want that job, and he was forced into it. And it was just a sad state of affairs. But he almost lost his command to mutiny, and it ended badly for him. But with Bellamy, he was such a charismatic person. I think you can tell them, Barry, his dissertation or his speech that he gave that was actually written down by the first mate of a British ship that he captured. Do you remember that one, Barry?
Yep. Yes, and he said something like, he was very critical about, the government and about preachers who didn't practice what they preach. And he went on and on and on. And that's on a recording in our museum in Bellamys Cabin. And so, yeah, it's an important story to tell. And of course, you just never know what you're going to find. I mean, every time we go offshore and go in the laboratory and go into a conclusion, like just the other day, I found a Templar, a Jacobite rose, a Jacobite flower on a set of cufflinks.
Wow.
And that's a pretty amazing find. And we have the oldest collection of Akan gold jewelry in the world.
Wow.
And the Akan gold was used by the Africans, and they traded that, it was what they, for religious purposes and whatever. But it's this beautiful, beautiful, very artistic, I don't want to say jewelry, but it was emblems and things like that, but it was made out of pure gold. And we have hundreds of pieces of that. And it's the oldest confirmed collection in the world.
Wow, that's amazing. It truly is.
And we also, Brandon just found a couple of years ago, we had always been working offshore. And a couple of years ago, he went to this new location and found about 1,000 African manila bracelets. They're these beautiful bronze and brass bracelets that African women would wear on their arms. And we also left a big pile that we weren't able to bring up because a storm hit us. So there are hundreds of more that are just waiting to be picked up. But right now, we have over 1,000 of these bracelets that are just amazing. And some of them, we were told, Brandon knows a lot more about this than I do, but some of them are extremely old. So we're still analyzing the collection. And again, because the Whydah robbed 54 ships, we have this incredible collection of cross-cultural material.
Yep.
We know that on board the Whydah, 50 pounds was added to every man's share, there being 180 men on deck. The money was kept in bags, in chests, between decks.
Wow.
And none was to take any without the quartermaster's leave. This was a statement from a pirate who was hanged. He wasn't bragging to the magistrate, but he said, 50 pounds was added to every man's share, there being 180 men on deck. This was the 50th ship that they captured. On the 52nd ship that they captured, there were 400,000 8/8. That's 400,000 1-ounce coins.
Oh,
And
my
these
goodness.
are all. This is not. This is all primary source information. From a court trial. From a stenographer recording what somebody said. And this guy wasn't bragging. They hanged him. He wasn't bragging about 50 pounds was added to every man's share. But that's 4.5 tons from one ship.
That's amazing. It truly is amazing. And all of it was on. I mean, did he have any any stashes on land anywhere, or was it all kept on the Whydah? I mean, did that
Who knows?
become his flagship, like his main? You talked about all the ships that he had. Was that?
Well, here's the thing. When Bellamy came to the Cape in 1715, he had come here to get men to go to the Caribbean to look for the 1715 fleet.
Yes.
The wrecks that Mel Fisher was working on.
Yep.
And when he came here to the Cape, and this is all legend, he fell in love with this beautiful young girl. Her name was Maria Hallett, and they had a love affair. She was very young, 15 or 16 years old. And he left for the Caribbean and promised someday that he would return and marry her. Well, he left for the Caribbean, and, not long after he left, Maria had Bellamy's illegitimate baby. And she hid the baby in a barn. And a straw caught in the baby's throat, and it choked and died. And one of the town officials found the dead baby in the barn with Maria. And subsequently, they put her in jail. And because she was able to bewitch the jailer into allowing her to walk in the graveyard, they tried her as a witch and drove her out of town.
Really?
And this is Maria Hallett. So Maria Hallett was condemned as a witch, tried as a witch, convicted as a witch. She had no idea that Bellamy had turned pirate. He went down to look for Spanish treasure and decided to go on the account and hooked up with Blackbeard, Labuse, and Benjamin Hornigold. And after he was elected as captain, he came back to the Cape, and the legend was that he was going to pick Maria Hallett up and head back to Maine, to Machias, Maine, which coincidentally, I probably shouldn't be saying this, is right across from where Oak Island is, Stone's Throw. And guess what? Bellamy's partner was an architect. And there are rumors of an area in this particular part of, and again, in Madagascar, we found the tunnel complex that Labuse built. This was on the front page of USA Today when we found this.
Right.
And so you have an architect here who's right across from Oak Island. And I told this to the Oak Island guys, is it possible that Labuse might have had something to do with it?
Oh, now you've opened up a whole nother can of worms.
Well, think about it. You've got an architect who's a pirate. He built a tunnel complex in Madagascar, which is a matter of record. I was in the tunnel. We found Chinese porcelain in the tunnel complex.
Oh,
The
boy.
same porcelain that we found on the shipwrecks, in the harbor. One of the ships that we found was Captain Kidd's ship, the Adventure Galley. And so it's there's a lot of things that were going on that need to be explored. But I just thought it was very interesting about Labuse. Labuse was from that part of Maine, Machias, and they were headed back to Machias. And I've been working with someone in Machias that thinks he has an idea where there's something there to look for.
Wow.
I'm up to my eyeballs with projects, but this is something that I thought was very interesting, especially that's where Labuse is from, and that's where they were headed to. And guess what? We found a map on the back of a pewter plate that we have that shows a peninsula, and it has 3 nail holes in it. It was nailed to the mast of the ship.
Wow.
And it looks to me like a peninsula, and it could have been one of the, peninsulas in Maine because there's a million of them there.
Right.
But that was nailed to that had 3 nail holes in and that hasn't hit the press yet.
Wow.
So, you know, it's just, there's a tremendous amount of information that, you know, and that's all I've been doing for the last 40 years is chasing these characters around. But we found Labuza's tunnel complex because he lived on this little tiny island. And when he left Isla Fabon, he never came back just because he was captured right offshore. And they brought him to another island in the Indian Ocean and they hanged him. And just before they hanged him, they threw out a piece of paper to the audience. And it had this cryptic writing on it with these symbols.
Yep.
And he said, "Find my treasure, he who can."
I heard
And he
about
threw
that.
the piece. Well, guess what? The same symbols that were on that piece of paper were on the plate that we found with the map on it.
Oh my goodness. Oh.
Please don't tie this into the 90-foot stone.
Yeah.
What's that?
Said, please don't
just
tie this
need
into the
another
90-foot stone on Oak Island. That would be mind blown, right?
Well, the funny thing is there, Jeff, is the first time there was me and Rick and I can't remember, it might have been Maddie in there, and we looked at this plate that that Barry's talking about, and all of us looked at each other and thought, "Oh my God, it's the same symbols you see on the 90s." Yeah.
Oh no.
And as Barry mentioned, there's a lot of Masonic symbols in the Whydah Museum. If you haven't had a chance to go there yet, I highly recommend it. It's should be on everybody's bucket list. You've done an amazing job with that museum, Barry. And you know,
Well,
you
thanks, Tony. All I need is another lifetime to finish it. You know, it's just like, oh my God.
Well, what got me is when you were talking about Maria Hallett before, you know, you look at one of Bellamy's pistols and there's a beautiful piece of hand embroidered silk that comes down. And
really?
you know, I don't know, was that Andrew who conserved that?
Let me tell you the story, okay?
Okay.
So we have this beautiful silk ribbon, and it was wrapped around the handle of a William III pistol. You can see William's King, you know, his effigy on the butt of the pistol, and it was in a concretion. So you've got this what looks like a piece of concrete the size of a cement block, and you X-ray it, and you see a pistol inside it. So it took weeks to take the pistol out of the concretion, and the archaeologist said, "Oh, there's a pistol, a ribbon wrapped around the handle." Oh, so that took weeks to take the ribbon out
Oh my gosh.
and to have it preserved. And it was a red silk ribbon with a rose pattern on it. And the ribbon was probably 6 or 8 feet long.
Wow.
Now, here's the story now. In 1937, a woman named Elizabeth Renard came to the Cape, and she was friends with the Hallett family from Wellesley,
Okay.
the ancestors of Maria Hallett. And when she was there, they told her a story of Maria Hallett giving Sam Bellamy a red ribbon with roses on it. Okay, that's pie in the sky talk. Okay, but here's what this is what I do. She wrote a book about it. She was the head of the English department at Barnard College. And in that book that was written in the 30s, she described going to Wellesley and being told the story of Sam Bellamy being given a ribbon by Maria Hallett that was red silk and had roses on it.
Wow.
Now, you can't make that up.
No.
You put that math together, that was Bellamy's ribbon.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Wow,
So
that's so fascinating.
Isn't that crazy?
It is. It truly is. Oh my gosh. I mean, there's so much. I mean, and you have, like you said earlier, you spent 40 years researching all of this information.
And
we're gonna have to do another show because I need to get more of this information from you. This is fascinating. Oh my gosh.
Oh, it just goes on and on and on forever. Unfortunately, my historian Ken Kincore passed away a few years ago, and he was a genius times 10, and was probably considered like the world's expert on pirates, and remembered everything. You know, was just so brilliant, and had spent his life, you know, studying pirates, and he did all of my research and was just the key to solving a lot of riddles.
Yeah, I have oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was one of the folks in the that's watching right now has a question, and this is from Robot, and he asked any connection to Oliver Lavasseur, known as the Buzzard, who helped build Fort is that Dauphin, Nova Scotia, sailed with Bellamy, and may have buried $1 billion in treasure on Oak Island. Oh, I don't know. But anyway, so Oliver Lavasseur was known as.
That's who they referred to as Labouze, the Buzzard.
Oh, okay,
That was
okay,
that's Lavoisier. And Lavoisier, from what I understand, came from France, and he had an architectural background,
okay.
and he had came from a wealthy family.
Wow. Okay, I didn't know that was two, one and the same. Okay. Wow.
But that to me, when having spent years on Madagascar,
Mhm.
and working there, finding all of the shipwrecks that we found in Madagascar, and the pirate graveyard, and all of the stories, and nobody even knew this stuff was there really until we started exploring for it in the late 90s. I would go to the beach and you just see all these blue and white pieces of porcelain everywhere.
Mhm.
And back in the 1700s, an English sea captain describes coming in to Ile aux Fabons and Ile Madame, which is where some of the other pirates live, describing a 10-foot high pile of blue and white porcelain on the beach.
Wow.
And when you went offshore where we dove, and this is all within this little tiny harbor, the pirates would capture ships coming from the Indian Ocean, coming down the Red Sea,
Mhm.
and they would bring them back to Madagascar, and then they would loot them and sink them in the harbor. And all they wanted to get was the gold and silver.
Right.
They didn't care about porcelain. They didn't care about all of the religious symbols that were coming from Mecca.
Mhm.
And this whole harbor is just filled with this material.
Wow.
And we were able to get quite a bit of the material as part of our Madagascar permit, and that'll be on display in Las Vegas. But
Wow.
yeah, it's just crazy stuff that we found there, and we've got just tremendous collection of material, with thousands and thousands of artifacts that haven't been seen yet.
Wow.
So Barry, you
Yeah.
mentioned that you found quite a few human remains. Are they on display, or are they in safe storage, or have you interred them back on the ship?
Well, again, when we have a big concretion like this, and there are skeletons inside it, we leave them intact. We don't. Again, it's and again, what do you do with them? We would, and we've talked about this, returning them to the country where they came from. But it's a complicated issue when
Yeah.
you find skeletal remains like that.
Mhm. Yeah, and I was wondering, when you mentioned that too, I was wondering if there's any kind of laws that kind of, if you're doing some sort of an excavation, like if they were doing on Oak Island and they came across bones, boom, you got to stop right now. You've got to have all this because now it's a grave and that changes everything. And I was wondering if obviously that's not the case, I'm assuming, with what you're finding underwater like that. Is that true?
Well, we go through the Massachusetts, Archaeological, Historical Society, and
Right.
all of what we do, and everything
Mhm.
that we find, we, record,
Yep.
take photographs of, and draw pictures. But if you find like a fibula in the middle of nowhere, concreted to a cannon, it's not a whole skeleton.
Right.
And we treat them respectfully, as and to tell as artifacts,
Mhm.
but with great respect.
Right. Absolutely. And you showed that one you from that um X-ray image. I guess that was an X-ray. Is that what you do on the concretion? Is you do like an X-ray on it to see what's inside? Is that what it's called, an X-ray?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And you found that person, whoever that was, had coins in their pocket or something like that. You were able to
Well,
find
he's
the
what we call hot spots.
okay.
He's definitely got hot metal right over the top of his pelvis where his pocket would be.
Well, yeah, in that area where his pocket would be. Wow.
So who knows what? But it's and again, all of these hot spots were lined up, and if you look at them in the X-ray,
Mhm.
they curve. It's just like a necklace. you know, you just don't find. And I found, you know, we found necklaces before and have seen them on X-rays. You'll see a whole line of dots connected, but in a circle or in a shape, and that, you know, that's when you find a necklace.
Yeah.
Because, you know, they're all lined up perfectly. They just don't fall on the bottom like that.
Right. Wow, this is fascinating. It truly is. Oh, you're muted, Tony. Still muted.
Hello?
Me now, guys.
Yeah, yeah, there you go.
So what Barry's saying there, like some of that stuff that's X-rayed, with the way technology is going, like if you look at, say, Oak Island, for example, you know, season whatever it was, 2, maybe, you know, to view the dye test, we had to throw a helicopter up in the air. Now you just throw a drone up. And so when Barry's talking about X-raying these concretions, you know, with XRF technology now, you can actually, you know, you can see the image and it brings it to life. And I think you saw the image of an earring that I found, did you not, Barry? And it's just mind blowing. It's, you know, I knew there was probably an earring in the concretion, but then it showed 2 earrings and a pendant. And so that's where technology is going. So who knows what's in El Grande that's sitting in the museum there, you know, and you know, if you can start breaking that up. I mean, I love the idea of what Barry was talking about before. If there's any way of taking DNA samples of these bones and then it's send the pirates home.
Yeah, we did that. We took samples of the bone in El Grande, and it turns out that the person was from North Africa, Eastern Europe, north of Africa, Eastern Europe, and was, you know, in his 20s.
Yeah, we had another person made a comment here that's watching and said, I always wondered what happened to the ownership rights of a shipwrecked treasure that is found in what he's calling no man's land, where no country has legal claim in international waters. Is that something you're familiar with on that? Either one of you, Tony or Barry?
I am very familiar with it. Basically, it's international salvage law. You arrest the shipwreck under, and you know, and you get a so. Oh, you're talking about in international waters.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you arrest the wreck under admiralty law.
Okay.
Isn't that right, Tony?
Yeah, it's how's my volume there now, guys?
Perfect.
Yeah. And so a lot of it depends on country of origin, and it also depends if it's a man of war or a ship of the fleet. And so if you look at what's happening off the coast of Colombia at the moment with the San Jose, you know, and this was seen also in Florida as well with shipwrecks down there. So pretty much, you know, Spain will put their hand up to any Spanish ship and say, "Oi, that's ours, give it back."
Yep.
You know, but then, you know, Colombia this time stuck their hand up and said, "Well, hang about, that's all the emeralds you stole off us," and you know, and then so I think there's, you know, it's been in court for about 6 or 7 years now, and you know, there's all kinds of arguments. You know, do you leave it there? Is it going to get broken up and destroyed by storms? You know, do you leave it in situ? And you know, with technology improving, just look at what's been found over the last couple of years. I mean, up in Canada here, we have Franklin's wrecks. You had the Endeavour found down off Antarctica, you know, Shackleton's ship. So there's all kinds of stuff. And in the future, these next couple of years, as technology progresses even further, I said to my daughter the other day, I don't know what she and Tallulah are going to see in the next few years.
Right. Yeah, you're starting to get that weird sound again down there. But you know, that's what in both of you, I know Barry, you have your Brandon, who obviously is going to carry on and keep this going. And Tony, do you have? I mean, is your children? Are they gonna? Do you think they're gonna follow in your footsteps with this sort of thing?
Isabel's diving already.
Say, oh, there you go.
So she met Barry, and it was actually fascinating. I remember the first time she met you, Barry, and she looked at that cannonball there, and she saw the broadhead arrow mark, the British mark, and told you the cannonball was British. So she's already well on her way. Yeah.
How old is she?
She's 12, And
Wow,
she can
that's
drive
amazing.
my boats. She can scuba dive. She hunts with me. So it's, yeah.
So are you adopting kids? Because I'm open. Either one of you. I mean, that's something I've told Tony this before when I've had him on the show, Barry, is that you two are leading the kind of life that so many of us would love to do. Obviously, the chips didn't fall. I'm loving what I'm doing now, and I wouldn't give it up for the world. But this is the type of thing where you guys get to explore and find these different shipwrecks. And again, I have to applaud you both for your ethic about how you're handling these things. It's just amazing. But it's something that you're bringing to us. And that's why I love having you on the show, because now you can come on here and explain to us what you're finding and where we can go and see this. You talk about how many different museums, Barry, that you were mentioning? You mentioned quite a few already. How many are there?
We have two open right now,
Mhm.
one in Salem and one here on Cape Cod.
Yep.
And then we had a traveling exhibit that traveled around the country,
That's
the
right,
world,
yep.
actually, with National Geographic. And so it's been going on for years and years and years. Again, millions of people have come to our exhibits, and we have enough. The scary thing is we've got so much material. We could build several museums, and that's how we plan to make money in the future, to continue the excavation.
Yep.
and continue the conservation is through museums.
Right.
And that's what we've done. We've opened a new page, really, in how we think appropriate way to marine salvage exploration work, especially under strict archaeological standards, and just preserving, for posterity.
Yep.
I'll give you, salvage laws were written to encourage salvagers, to risk lives and property in returning lost materials to commerce, quote unquote. And for doing it, they would be given an award, and that award would be decided by one admiralty judge. I've been spent many days in front of judges on various claims that I've had over the years, including water ships like the Artisan steamship, and that's how I got money to originally start the project. And that was back, I don't want to screw up, but it was in the late 70s, and the Martha's Vineyard Shipwreck, and I was credited with we kept the float and kept it from state, and the salvage award for that, and I used that money to go for the winner.
Wow. And nobody can put that past. I mean, you have to be able to, that you're not going to sell any of the pieces or artifacts or any of the gold or anything like that you're finding. You have to be able to be able to continue what you're doing. There has to be a source of income, and through the museum, I can see that's at least one way that you can do that, because nobody's going to take that away from you. You have to be able to fund what you're doing. And if you take on investors, they're going to go, okay, well, I want some of that treasure you're finding. And of course, that's not something you want to do either. So it's got to be a fine line that you have to go through there to be able to do that. You have to be able to make money to be able to continue what you're doing. That's
well, years ago, we, 40 years, when we first started, we raised a little bit of money and brought in some investors, and having second thoughts on the whole thing, if I had to do over again, I would have done this as a nonprofit.
Yeah. Wow.
Because all it takes is one greedy person to take the whole thing upside down.
Yeah, exactly.
And we've got this one character who, I can't go into it, but very, 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 very dangerous, very bad stuff.
I can only imagine.
Oh, God.
Because it's
especially when you,
well,
the newspapers, and with all due respect, these prices have come on what this material is worth based on, and I've never said it, but there's these crazy estimates like 400 million is what and who knows what it's worth.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
and again, you're talking about things that paid for people. I don't know how you put a price on that.
I don't either. I really don't. And there, it has to be. It has to be something that you're. I guess really saying that I'm breaking up a little bit. But you
Oh,
guys
yes,
can.
I can hear you.
Yeah, you and I are on the phone on my side, but I hope we're coming through. I think.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, that's got to be extremely important, to be able to carry on the race. But you have to be able to make some money some way. One of the things I wanted to ask about what you're doing right there off of Cape Cod was, and I was curious about how deep is that water that you guys were diving in when Tony was there?
Well, when we were diving was probably about 20, 25 feet of water. And where we dive, it depends where you're, but we don't dive deeper than like 40 feet. Again, our packs are buried 10, 20, 30 feet below the sand.
Mm-hmm.
And you really have to go and do it to dig down that deep to get down to the pack water without, strength. Digging a 30 foot hole in the ocean is not easy. But we've come up with some good technology we put on the back of our big boat. It's the deflector that deflects the rock wash straight down.
I was just going to ask you about that. Yeah.
With the deflector, we can aim it, and basically dig a trench very easily and kind of melt the sand away without destroying and it's just sand. You don't find things stratified. Everything is down to that layer of Pleistocene glacial. So it's just getting down to that layer of Pleistocene glacial sill, and then setting up a grid, and then doing our archaeological work. And what we were doing the other day, Brandon and Tony, they were just looking for hot spots where we could get in and put in a grid and excavate the area. So they were just, Brandon was just trying to get an idea of what was there, and a nightmare. There's stuff everywhere.
Yeah. Looks like I have a bit of an unstable connection at the moment. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tony.
And I think, you hit the nail on the head when we were talking before, Barry. We got lucky that there had been a storm and that part of the wreck was uncovered. And again, it's, people say, well, it's so close to shore. Why doesn't everybody do it? And the thing is that dynamic environment. We are basically in a washing machine getting tossed around, and then all of a sudden, you're in a hole. And as I think somebody said the other day, they heard me say, it's like diving in a salad. You've literally got.
But it was interesting. Sorry.
Yeah, you got me there.
Left out of the show.
Yeah, we hear you.
We're the place where we dive is called Whydah Gally. Okay, there are more whale sharks up there, and I had a 15-foot swim.
Really? Oh my gosh! Wow!
They're everywhere. Wow. I have where I am right now. I have 1,000 feet offshore. I have 20 feet of water under me now, and my house is on the end here, and we have sharks under our house. But and we have down under my house, which I have this building. I rent it downstairs to the Atlantic White Shark Conservatory. So, white sharks are again, this place is called Shark Alley. It's very, very dangerous. It's also dangerous because of the very bad visibility. And it's 25 miles from the closest harbor.
Wow.
It's called the Graveyard of the North Atlantic for a very, very good reason. There are over 1,000 shipwrecks there.
Wow.
And that's the
I guess we're going to connect. Go ahead.
That's the interesting thing is like when you're in the hole and the mungweed floats in around you. I think it was after everybody else was out of the water and I was in the hole by myself and swimming in the salad. And it's exactly like Barry said. And then you can see the shadows of the sharks going across the top of you.
Oh.
And it makes the hair on your back stand up. That's for sure. But it's
that's the part.
So Tony, do you bring anybody down there for protection?
What was that, mate?
No, there's
do you bring anybody down with you for protection, like with the like spears or whatever?
There's no point. You can't see them. and especially when that weed comes around, they think you're a seal in the weed. So it's you're not on the menu, but you can be mistaken identity for sure.
So are sharks colorblind?
They see shades of gray that we don't. So in murky water, they definitely will identify you by your shadow or your shape. And so quite often the bites are mistaken identity. They don't like humans. We're too bony.
So what you're saying is we should take a collection for a fluorescent pink wet.
I wouldn't say that either.
I mean,
we found out up here that they actually like mouthing the orange buoys. And so one of my dry suits is actually orange. So I think next time I'm down the Cape, I won't be wearing my orange dry suit.
Good plan.
Yeah. I see a
God.
question there that have we encountered the great white sharks off Nova Scotia here?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, we see them every year. And in fact, 2 of my skippers this year, they had 2 great white sharks take 2 seals simultaneously off Oak Island, off Smith's Cove.
It's not unusual for if you're going on the morning commute to work to Halifax to hear the radio stations come in with a break-in that somebody's reported seeing them in the harbor as they cross the ferries from Dartmouth to Halifax.
Yeah. As the fishermen are not killing the seals as much anymore, and the waters are warming up, we're seeing a lot more shark activity up this way.
It looks like I'm still having a bit of connection issue, but yeah, we're going to wrap things up here quick. But one of the things I just wanted to ask real quick to the
Well, I think we just lost Jeff there for a few minutes. So, Barry, are you still on? Are you still online there with us, Dad? Right now?
Hear you, Jeff. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you, buddy.
Oh, I don't know what happened there. We're having the technical glitches tonight. As I mentioned, me and Barry are divers, and you put the wet stuff near the sparky stuff, and things go wrong. So.
Well, it's all good. It's all good. So, can you tell us a little bit about Beyond Oak Island shows? Is there more coming down the pike? More episodes for the year?
There is more Beyond Oak Islands coming down the line. It's a fantastic show. I've really enjoyed working with the team. They're in a marvelous group of people, and it's not just guys like Barry and myself that make this. If you can imagine that Gavin, the underwater videographer, not only is he trying to do his craft, but he's trying to do it in a bowl of salad surrounded by sharks. So, and then there's, the producers, the sound people, they're getting tossed around and beaten to hell out there on the ocean. This is not just a couple of guys out there having a lark. This is a dedicated team that, basically, for want of a better word, get the crap kicked out of them every day on the ocean. So wow. It's I really, my hat's off to all the guys in the Beyond team and the Oak Island team that go out there, the people that nobody ever sees,
the hidden heroes.
I'm so excited. I'm so happy that things have worked out like this, and I'm living my best life. I'm living my childhood dream. Yeah,
it's hard. That's not hard to tell. But you should get your daughter invested into some of the shows too. She could become a cast member.
You never know. She actually did work on another movie with me this year.
Oh, did she? Wow, yeah. That would be awesome to see you working side by side, and like a little. That'd be kind of inspiring for for a father-daughter team to be working on some of the same projects.
Yeah, she was driving the boat while we were out on another TV show, so it may happen yet.
Well, maybe she and Maddie could be dive buddies or something like that.
Yeah. Well, it's the same with Barry's granddaughter, Tallulah. Her and Isabel are about the same age. So you never know if we find more shipwrecks or something out there, it might be the next generation.
Absolutely, that would be awesome. Can you imagine them working side by side and having their own show?
You never know. I mean, I never could have imagined that, I'd still be swimming around a swamp 10 years later.
Yeah. Are we back? Can you guys hear us and see us again?
I can hear you. And Renee's got a comment there. Are all the sharks tagged? No, Renee, only about 1 in 100's tagged. And so people say I've been in the ocean all my life and I haven't seen a shark. Well, you were close to it. You just didn't know.
Yeah. Yep. Barry, are you still with us?
I am. Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, I had to reset my connection there. I think we're back. But that was something I wanted to ask you about too, Tony, was about I didn't want to get into Oak Island because I know there's so much you can't talk about there, but they just showed the episode Tuesday night where you were pushing the Zodiac boat around in the swamp. And I got to say that had to be, not only, take a lot of strength, and a stamina to do that for, I don't have a clue how long you were pushing that boat around. But, we saw Billy Gerhardt going in there with the long reach excavator and pulling out that deep muck. So when you're pushing that Zodiac boat around, you're walking in that stuff. That can't be easy.
How's my volume now, guys?
It's a little scratchy at the moment. Yeah.
Hang on, I'll try reset.
Okay.
You could say that the rubber raft that was being pushed around was a 1 horsepower engine.
No, one diver power.
I stand correct.
Yeah, but you're right. You can actually feel the density of the bottom change as you're going through. Sometimes you'll be walking on a solid piece, and then all of a sudden you'll vanish into a hole, and that's like the swamp. From season when I say season 1, from the first year, I was crawling around in the muck there. There's roots and there's all kinds of stuff. That was up by the stone walkway on the northern side that we found. And that was purely by accident probing with the metal spike. And so there's so many more things in the swamp that we just don't know. And as technology improves, like with Burton and Jeremy's devices this year, it's the new stuff is going to show up all the time.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and I just felt for you when I was watching you do that. You did it once before. I think you had Dr. Spooner in the boat or something like that. You were pushing the boat around, and I felt for you then. And then watching you do that on the show the other night, I just thought, oh my gosh, it's got to be so difficult doing that. I can't imagine.
It keeps me fit.
Yeah. Yeah, and I appreciate it, Jeff. I guess Linda said you jumped right in when we disappeared there, and you did your co-host duties perfectly. So thank you so much for that.
Just not another pretty face, Jeff.
Well, there you go. This is true, right?
I'm not the window dresser.
Yeah, but I know we still have Barry on the phone too. But you guys were talking about the family legacy carrying on in your footsteps and all of that, and that's just fantastic, really. And I've said before, I told you once before that, I think that you could easily have your own television show and do your own thing out there and go and discover all kinds of things at sea and then share it with all of us. I think you would be perfect in that role. You've got that presence about you, and you've got the the knowledge and everything to carry that on. I think you would do a great job with it. Hopefully you're working on something like that. I know you probably can't talk about that kind of stuff, but I hope you are, because I think that would be great. And I would be talking about it right here on this podcast. I would talk about it all the time. So there you go.
Well, thank you, Jeff. I mean, the interesting thing is Isabel was working with me this year on another show, but it's like with Barry's granddaughter, Tallulah, as well. I mean, there's so many interesting things and artifacts and stories out there. And it's not all about me. And I hate to say this, buddy, it's not all about you either, Barry. If Brandon and Tallulah can run this, when we're sitting on a wharf having a beer somewhere, I'm okay with that too.
Yep. Well, there's got to be there's probably a point at which that you just let them carry on, and you become more of a supervisory role at that point. But you're both keep it going as long as you can, for sure. Absolutely. This has been a fascinating evening, and I know we've had a lot of technical difficulties here, folks, tonight. I really apologize for that. And I want to have Barry back on, and maybe even Brandon at some point, along with Tony. So we'd like to see more of this. And I got such an education tonight, just talking about all of this and finding out the ins and outs of what Barry Brandon has done. I've had the pleasure. I'm actually wearing the shirt right now. I've had the pleasure of going down and meeting with and having on my show Melvin Apt, with the Mel Fisher Museum and the Tocha. And I've also met with I'm going to be meeting Rob Westrick as well. He's in they've been 1715 fleet. And so this is something that has been a absolute to meet you all and to be able to hear your stories and the things that you guys have been doing out there has been wonderful. And I know that it's not just all about Oak Island, because there's so much out there that's interesting. And getting to meet you all is just wonderful, and hearing the stories. I can't. Renee asked about books. Anybody writing a book about any of this kind of stuff? Tony, Barry, writing a book about your adventures?
I've
I
written,
do. Go ahead, Barry.
and I'm in the process now of putting a book together on the Santa Maria,
Awesome.
a ship that we believe we located off of Haiti. And I've been just so crazy busy with all these different projects. But I've written 2 or 3 books on the Whydah, and I've written for children's books with National Geographic, and yeah.
Barry, when you said the Santa Maria, you're not referring to Columbus' Santa Maria, are you?
What's that?
When you said you're doing a book about some stuff about a ship called the Santa Maria, you're not referring to Christopher Columbus's Santa Maria, are you?
Yeah, no, we were down there we got our permit back in the late 90s with Senator Kennedy, arranged all of that, and I worked with the Haitian government. I was put in a committee to save the Santa Maria, and we absolutely have no question that we found it.
Oh, wow.
And we found the 8th and 9th Lombards that were discovered in the Western Hemisphere, exactly the distance from Fort Navidad that Columbus described in his book, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we spent years doing it, working with tarp archaeologists. Then UNESCO came in, and UNESCO does not like Americans. And of course, they said Israel had no connection to the temple of, Temple of Jerusalem, so they don't like Jews either. But they didn't. They came in and said that our wreck was, and I don't even know if they were on the right wreck, because they never reviewed any of our research. They never reviewed any of our archaeological records or any of our pictures. They just said, no, this is not it, because we found a brass rivet or a brass spike on the wreck. And I don't even know if they were on the right wreck. But the Columbus's ship was built in the Bronze area of Europe. This is what they were using all the way back to the Vikings were using it. So the bottom line is we know we found it. And the same thing with Captain Kidd's ship. Do you know who Foxy is? He does that show on like adventure training.
I'm not familiar with him.
Okay, I thought he was. But anyway, he was with us. I just saw something he wrote the other day about finding one of the bars that we found in Madagascar. But not. The bottom line is that we spent 20 years on the Santa Maria site, and now Haiti's such a complete mess. It's impossible to get back there.
Wow.
The whole kidnapping thing.
Yeah.
And if to go back there, you're taking a real
risk.
chance about being kidnapped, especially with these big figures flying around in the world.
Yeah,
You know, like $400 million treasure. So anyway, yeah. So I'm in the process now of putting a book together on that, which I hope to get out in the next couple of years or so.
that'd be great. Yeah, Tony, you might have to reset, but you were going to say something about a book as well. I think you have to reset because I hear it's making noise.
How's that, guys?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. No, I'm not writing a book at the moment. I do actually write a quarterly article for Atlantic Boating magazine up here in Canada. And that's about the shipwrecks here around Nova Scotia. And so over the last year or two, it's been very well received. And you never know, Barry, I might write something about you and the Whydah in there in the next few months.
The Atlantic, say that again. What was it called? The
Atlantic Boating magazine.
Okay, we're gonna have to put that. I'll put that in the description of the show. Is that a free publication that people can get, or
you can actually get it online as well? Atlantic Boating magazine, and the article I do is a quarterly. It's called "Wrecked with Tony." And
does that mean you have a few beers along with it?
I was gonna say that could also be after the Mug and Anchor for a little while. Yeah.
You get wrecked with Tony?
It's funny you should say that, Jeff. That was the idea. I was going to do a podcast as well. And there was a comedian when I was a young boy called Dave Allen. And he used to sit there and sip away at his scotch. And as the show went on, he would slowly get wrecked. And so that was my idea, Wrecked with Tony.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, my gosh. Okay, Atlantic Boating Magazine. All right, so I'm going to have to I'll find that, folks, and we'll put a link in the description of the show for that if you want to check that out. I'm going to certainly check it out. That's really good. Yeah. So, yeah, and you have to, you should write about Barry and what they're doing there on the Whydah as well. That would be interesting. After everything airs, of course, because I know that, so much out there. So, wow, this has been fascinating. Jeff, any last thoughts that you want to get out before we go?
Man, I don't know. This has been great tonight. I tell you, this has been the highlight of whatever I've been involved with this podcast. This is fantastic tonight. I'll have to watch the replay. I think it'd be great to listen to that.
Yep. Yeah, I appreciate it very much. Barry, thank you so much, sir. I'd love to be able to meet you sometime. I've been pretty fortunate in meeting I've had on the show, even though I got to see you a little bit in the pre-show, but and you too, Tony. One of these days I'm going to make it up. I talk about Oak Island and all that every week on the show here, but I've never been there. So I've never even been to Nova Scotia. So when I get up there, I'm still going to buy you that pint over at the Mug and Anchor, and maybe I'll end up getting wrecked with Tony as well. So I'm a lightweight, though. It only takes a couple, and I'm done. I'm wrecked. Yeah. After we go out on a tour, because I am going to buy a tour, and I want to get out there. Our two friends that we have helping us co-host. It takes a pint. Yeah, that's about all it takes for me is a pint. Yeah, exactly. But our two friends that work with the show here, Henry DeWitt and Tom Burns, both were up there, and they went on your tour. They got to meet you. They got to meet Jeff in person there, and they talk about it all the time about how great it was to meet you guys. And so now it's my turn. I got to get up there in 2023 and get up there myself and meet you guys and have that pint. We got to have that pint. What's your beer of choice there, Tony?
For me, how's the audio, guys?
It's a little scratchy, but I can hear you.
Hang on, I'll just reset there.
There we go. That's perfect.
That's good. Yep. So up here, the Mug and Anchor have their own brew. It's called the Mug and Anchor.
Oh, okay.
But I like a thing by Propeller Brewing Company called Galaxy.
Galaxy. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
And there's also another one called Frig Off. Yep.
Do you don't like Dirty Blonde from Home Bay?
Dirty Blondes are okay, and None on the Run.
Not on the run. Not on the run. Oh, that sounds great. All right. Well, we'll have to sample as many as we can there before I'm under the table, so it won't take long, but we'll give it a shot. So, okay. Thank you guys so very much. Barry, are you still there, Barry?
Yep, I am. Yep.
I got to tell you, sir, I am very honored to at least meet you on the show here today. And thank you so very, very much for coming on and giving us a better look at what is going on with you and your family and the things you've done there with the Whydah. And I had no idea that you had all these other wrecks that you found and things you're doing. Wow. I mean, I really, at some point here, I'm going to have you back on the show and maybe we can get Brandon on with you and we can just talk about all you guys have done because it sounds like a lifetime of adventure and searching.
Oh
And
my God.
yeah, wow, fascinating. Well, thank you so much for being honest with us tonight, Tony. You too, appreciate it. Jeff Babineau, thank you for co-hosting. You were fantastic. You took over and did well. And folks, thank you all for being here with us tonight. It's really been a lot of fun. And I apologize again for the technical issues, but we'll get this all worked out. All right, I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you,
Yeah,
Tony.
Thank you so much for having us, guys.
Thank you.
And,
Thank you very much, guys.
Yep. And don't forget, if you're down Cape Cod, please go and see Barry's Whydah Museum there. It's inspirational. It's life-changing. And if you're up in Nova Scotia, come and see us on Salty Dog Sea Tours.
Yes, Salty Dog Sea Tours. You still go through, don't you, on your website? The hats and all that kind of stuff? Oh, I'm frozen.
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. I've got my hat. It's actually in the bedroom back there, but yeah, I've got my hat. I should have been wearing it tonight in honor for Salty Dog Sea Tours. But all right. Thank you, folks. We'll catch you next time right here on the Curse of Oak Island and Beyond the live stream. Good night.
Good night.
Good night,
Okay,
folks.
guys.